When the world witnessed injustice, people united in protest. So we came together in solidarity to support the movement for social justice and racial equality. Sony Pictures commits to take action and execute on a multi-pronged racial equity and inclusion strategy. Sony Pictures formed the Action Council to carry out this initiative, led by two co-chairs, Paul Martin and Keith Weaver, an executive sponsorship by Tony Vinciquera and Stacey Green and the leadership team. The Action Council is comprised of 12 executives from across the business who are passionate and eager to make a lasting impact. Our strategy is founded on 4 pillars: people, community, partners, and content. Each pillar uniquely supports Sony Pictures Action, and Sony Pictures Action aspires to be a key puzzle piece in creating racial equity and social justice. Our subcommittees align with these 4 pillars, as well as 3 regions, and focuses on 4 verticals: individual education and development, social justice and policy reform, authentic storytelling, and rebuilding community. Each subcommittee includes individuals with diverse skill sets from across the business and around the world. We are united as equals, stronger as one. Welcome to Sony Pictures Action.
I want to say thanks to the Emma Bowen Foundation for allowing young people to be exposed to a world and way that they would otherwise not experience, for giving them access, allowing these students to actually see what is possible, create hope and opportunity.
For decades, the Emma Bowen Foundation has partnered with some of the country's most prominent media organizations and connected them to talented young people of color.
And it's a testament to the impact this foundation has been able to place on the media industry. It has touched the lives of so many, and it has changed so many careers.
Not only did I have an internship for 4 summers, but I also was able to graduate college without any debt from Syracuse University, which is a huge achievement.
Of a commitment to providing career opportunities for young people of color, and a commitment to diversifying the media industry.
Called the Michaud Film Festival, and it's named after the first Black person to own a film studio.
We need more festivals like this.
Understand about these kinds of disruptors.
It's quick to see how the Oscar Michaud Film Festival is just different.
We wanted to provide a stable foundation, and we wanted to provide a solution. So many different people from all walks of life and backgrounds come out.
The 3-day multicultural event celebrates diversity in front of the camera and behind the scenes.
We're talking about Michaud, again, a legendary filmmaker, and a lot of the films that are going to be shown here this weekend are really in the spirit of what he was trying to carry on, and it's really what makes this film festival stand out.
Just making the community and the entertainment landscape just more positive as a whole.
We wanted to create a space where filmmakers of every background feel welcome and their work valued, because that's really important, especially as independent artists.
They deserve to be heard.
Noel Braham and Courtney Branch try and carry on Michaud's name to bring good films to the masses, including those that can spark change.
It's a festival that's championing diverse voices.
When the world witnessed injustice, people united in protest. So we came together in solidarity to support the movement for social justice and racial equality. Sony Pictures commits to take action and execute on a multi-pronged racial equity and inclusion strategy. Sony Pictures formed the Action Council to carry out this initiative, led by two co-chairs, Paul Martin and Keith Weaver, an executive sponsorship by Tony Vinciquera and Stacey Green and the leadership team. The Action Council is comprised of 12 executives from across the business who are passionate and eager to make a lasting impact. Our strategy is founded on 4 pillars: people, community, partners, and content. Each pillar uniquely supports Sony Pictures Action, and Sony Pictures Action aspires to be a key puzzle piece in creating racial equity and social justice. Our subcommittees align with these 4 pillars, as well as 3 regions, and focuses on 4 verticals: individual education and development, social justice and policy reform, authentic storytelling, and rebuilding community. Each subcommittee includes individuals with diverse skill sets from across the business and around the world. We are united as equals, stronger as one. Welcome to Sony Pictures Action.
Greetings and welcome to all of us, all who have joined us for this conversation. This is socially relevant versus socially responsible content. And I am very excited to have the chance to speak to 2 very fly, very fierce female Sony execs who are both very much on the come up and here at the studio and around town. My name is Brett King. I am the Vice President, Creative Programming for Diversity and Inclusion at Sony Pictures Entertainment. And what that very lengthy job title means is that I'm something of a diversity dot connector at the lot. So what I'm there to do is to make sure that we speak with the most authentic voices possible to the most diverse audiences possible with the most diverse content creators on this side and then reaching the broadest, the most diverse audience on that side. So that is a very broad mandate, but basically what it means is, I try to get in where I fit in. So we try to really, we try to make things happen we try to look for opportunities for inclusion as it touches, that's going to happen every now and then, forgive me. We try to identify opportunities for inclusion as it touches the businesses of film and television. And part of that role, part of my role is I'm often in charge of outreach like this to film festivals, to conferences, and to targeted events that are reaching audiences just like the Michelle Film Festival. So very, very exciting for Sony to take part in the Oscar Michelle Film Festival. As we all know, I'm sure anybody who's attending this festival, Michelle was an African-American author, film director, and independent producer of more than 44 films. For sure, the most significant African-American director of the first half of the 20th century. He had his own studio, the short-lived Lincoln Motion Picture Company, the first movie company owned and controlled by Black filmmakers. So very, very, very cool to be here. Thank you so very much. And I am going to introduce what's interesting about the Michelle time and the time that we're in now. We're now at a time when an explosion of content, distribution channels, and global audiences are permitting Black stories to be told more authentically and more visibly than any time in cinematic history. So we're here to talk to 2 execs that are on the leading edge of this historic moment. And let me introduce them. First, we have Giselle Johnson. Giselle is a native Houstonian and a Howard alum. She is obsessed with the world of film and TV. She came to LA right after Howard. She started working at Vice Studios, where she was involved in Judy and Punch and Amazon's The Report. From there, she came after 2 years at Vice. She was recruited by Netflix and joined their original studio film team as a creative assistant. And there she was able to work on some pictures like The Midnight Sky, Jingle Jangle, Spencer Confidential, and The Irishman, just to name a few. She's now creative executive at Sony Screen Gems, and she's leading the new slate of comedy and romance films from that label. So, Giselle Johnson, welcome.
Hi, really, really happy to be here.
And we're very, very happy to have you. We also have with us the one, the only Fassa Sarr. Fassa is the manager acquisitions for Sony Pictures Worldwide Acquisitions Group. She joined the division in 2018 as an intern, thank you very much, and has worked on various film acquisitions, including Searching, which I might mention was directed by an alumni of the Diverse Directors Program, a man named Anish Chiganti. That movie starred John Cho and Deborah Messing. She also worked on I Carry You With Me and the brilliant and beautiful Broken Hearts Gallery, which I hope you were able to see, directed by Natalie Kinski, and executive produced by Selena Gomez. So prior to joining Sony, Fassa interned at Variety magazine and also UTA, the United Talent Agency, And she was also a congressional intern for Congressman Eric Swalwell, and worked on the now Vice President Kamala Harris's senatorial campaign in 2016. As an individual with dual heritage, American and Senegalese, Fassa is devoted to uncovering unique stories that define cultural conversations that span across borders. So welcome, Fassa. Thank you very much for being here.
So much, Brett. Thank you all.
So just very simply, explain how, I'm going to go with Fassa first, because Sony Pictures Worldwide Acquisitions Group, the group that for some reason does not call themselves SWAG. I'll never understand why, but they don't call themselves. So Sony Worldwide Acquisition Group does, as the name implies, acquisitions. So what does that mean from an executive standpoint? What is an acquisition executive?
Yeah, definitely. Well, first of all, I mean, I think the acquisitions group has definitely evolved within our studio for the last 20 years. We actually started off being a VOD group where we would go and we would actually make these DVDs, and then we would sell them to Walmart, Target, etc. And we would go to different festivals, and then we would basically be able to pick those movies up and then essentially ship them out. So into the whole entire country, and then obviously abroad. That has definitely changed now. Now we are a theatrical division within Sony, where we essentially go to different film festivals around the world: Sundance, Cannes, Toronto, Tribeca, South by Southwest, Venice, Telluride, and we pick up movies at those various festivals and see how we can program within our studio. And so we are looking through different lenses. We're looking through the lens of Screen Gems label, which Giselle is on, and then we're looking through the lens of Columbia. We're looking.
Not quite sure if Fassa is frozen for you, but she is frozen for me.
Yeah, she's frozen for me too.
Frozen a little bit. So then I'm going to go to Giselle for a second, and I'm going to talk about Screen Gems, which is part of the Sony Pictures Motion Picture Group, which includes Columbia Pictures, TriStar Pictures, Sony Worldwide Acquisitions Group, as we mentioned, Stage 6, and Screen Gems. So tell us about Screen Gems and your role at Screen Gems. And Fassa, I see you're back. Thanks.
Yeah, okay, great. Yep, so I'm working over at Screen Gems as a creative executive, and in the sense that Fassa, they travel to the film festivals and acquire films, we're a little bit more on the ground up. So I'm more so in the development space. So pitches come in, books, podcasts, short stories, things of those nature. We're kind of figuring out what should actually be made into a movie. And we're working with writers and directors to really bring it to life. So we're there from a very nascent stage, and we bring it all the way through development, through production. And the really cool thing about Screen Gems is we're a little bit more producerial. So we'll be very active, we'll be on sets, we're watching every single cut for post-production, all the way to the finish line till we release. So yeah, it's really great being able to be a part of a project from start to finish fully.
And what are the pictures at Screen Gems? How does a picture at Screen Gems, Fassa was saying that she likes to look at her acquisitions through the various lenses of Columbia Pictures, of TriStar Pictures, of Screen Gems, et cetera. What is the sort of mandate of Screen Gems, or kind of their creative, what are they known for?
Yeah, so we are a genre label. So we like to cater to specific audiences. So right now, very much so known for horror thriller. Back in the day, they've made some of my favorite movies like Think Like a Man and Two Can Play That Game, that were catered to diverse audiences. And then we really like to try to make movies for women between the ages of like 18 to 30 that are very poppy, sort of chick flick type movies. So yeah, I would say, when you think about a Columbia, for instance, and they're making the sequels and really big movies to appeal to broad audiences, we more so are focused on specific groups and making sure that we make movies that are that specific group's favorite movie. So that's more the business that we're in.
And in terms of the budget levels, I know the Columbia Pictures is like, 75 million and up.
Yeah.
TriStar, maybe more in that middle, 35 to 75, something like that. Where does Screen Gems generally find their
Our sweet spot is 15 to 20 million. So another huge part of our business is being able to make movies of quality for a price and then hopefully get a huge return back to help make more movies. So yeah, we're definitely in the highest that we will maybe go is a 40, but in that sense, you get into co-financing. And again, that's when you can kind of see a little bit more of our producer side and all of that.
Right. And I understand, Fassa, that at acquisitions, you can get involved at a picture at almost any stage of the picture, from the very beginning to almost just that, like, it's finished and you're going to play it now.
Exactly. And I'm sorry for having a little bit of a freeze there, but exactly, we are able to kind of look at a picture at any point, starting from the script stage, right? So there's a script, there's a director, there hopefully are producers, and then we try to kind of see, what does this package look like? A package meaning there's a script and there's all of these elements, and then we can look at it and buy it at that point. Or we can say, hey, we would really love to kind of see this evolve a little bit more. And we can kind of look at it at production stage where they have dailies, for example, and they have a promo and they can send us, or a sizzle reel, and then they can send us something that we can actually see what the movie would look like. Or we can buy it again at a festival when we see at Sundance or Toronto or whatnot. And so what's really cool about our group is that we do have that sense of flexibility where we can look at it at any stage, or we can come back and say, hey, maybe at that script stage, we couldn't buy it, but we can come back and see it once it's executed. So yeah, we definitely have that sense of flexibility within our group.
And I know sometimes acquisitions will go to a festival, acquire a project, but only acquire, say, the international distribution rights. And so how does, do you get involved in that decision-making, or is that generally speaking a financial decision?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really does, it's both. Once we get a film, typically it's kind of hard to explain, but I would say that typically we find out if a movie is available domestically, international only, or worldwide. So if we know about a film and if that film is already set up with a sales agent, it's about to play at a festival, they'll say, oh my goodness, we're so sorry, A24 already has domestic, but we really love the film. We're able to kind of touch it internationally, and be able to, whether it's for our TV deals or whether it's for, theatrically, internationally, we're able to really work with our local offices to see if this is something that the UK, Australia, wherever it might be, if they would want to take this out theatrically. We typically find out if a movie is available and what the rights are available at a film market. So typically these film markets happen about 2-3 times a year, and that's at Cannes. That's at the American Film Market, which happens in the fall in Santa Monica, or at the Berlin Film Festival. And that's when we can kind of understand, okay, what is available for this film and how can we buy it, and how can we touch it? So that typically happens then. But we have had a major success, I think, with our group in terms of being able to really kind of support the film and the filmmakers internationally, to just make sure that the film is being seen to international audiences and not just here domestically. And so we did that most recently with Sound of Metal, where Amazon was able to release it here in the United States, and we were able to really help and support the film internationally.
I did not know that Sony had a piece of that film. That's great. Just saw that the other day. Brilliant film.
Congrats on the Oscar win.
Yeah, girl, go ahead. Nice. Let's get that hardware. We love that. So I know that, Giselle, you started out at Vice Productions. And one of the things about Vice was, what they were trying to do, at least at the time at Vice Studios, was they were trying to make pictures that were both commercially viable and populist in their appeal, but also socially impactful. And is that something that you have carried with you? And if so, how does that how does that impact your decision making now with the projects with which you get involved?
Absolutely. Absolutely. For me, I'm always asking the question in any pitch, any script that I read. It's sort of just like, what's trying to be said and why this film now? And that is definitely a question that my bosses, when I was at Vice, would ask often. It would be like, why this film now? And that would be whether it was a comedy, whether it was a horror movie, a drama, it didn't matter. It's still like that same question applied. So whenever I'm reviewing material, I definitely look at it from that lens. And it's not always like on the nose. Like that's definitely something that you don't want to do. Like if you're trying to make some type of political statement about the world that we're in, it doesn't always have to be like hitting you over the head. It can be those nuances in a script. And at the end of the read, you're like, oh, wow, that's what they were trying to do. That's actually brilliant and smart. And we should make this movie. So yeah, I'm always looking for content that is broad in its appeal and commercial and is very fun and poppy and takes you on a ride. But at the end of the day, you understand what it was trying to say. And that's definitely content that I chase and that I love personally when I'm watching, whether it be film or TV. What is it trying to say? Yeah.
We had, it was an interesting Oscars this year. We just mentioned the Oscars a moment ago. And one of the interesting things about it is so many of the films were would have been considered in previous years, perhaps kind of niche in their appeal. But I think what was also very clear is it was very much about authentic voices and authentic storytelling. Do you have I'm going to throw this to you, Fassa, any surprises for you this year at the Oscars, any disappointments? And what does it say? What do the Oscars and the results say about where we're going in the film business?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I mean, I definitely would say that I think we're seeing an evolution in terms of the types of stories that are being considered and then the ones that are winning, right? Like I was thinking about it, just a couple years, it was Oscar so white. And I think that still might be the case, but there is change. We're seeing these inklings of change right before us. And I think that it made me realize this Oscars, that we must recognize that and realize that and continue this pattern, because I definitely think that it starts all the way from, crazy enough, starts all the way from festivals and how festivals program. Right? It's like the festivals must program these diverse stories and continue to do so, because these festivals are launching pads for the awards and then for the Academy Awards. So I definitely think that we're seeing a little bit of change, and I'm so excited about that. But I also think that there definitely needs to be more. And I think too, it's crazy to think that we are in this time right now that we're able to really have these niche, but not really niche. These are like human stories, right? Like these are human stories that are able to be in the limelight, and that's with the help of streamers, that's with the help of, traditional studios. But it's like, that's really, really exciting that we're able to have these different stories being told, like Minari or like Nomadland, like those that would have never happened just a couple years ago. So it's like, yeah, they're niche, they might be smaller, but these are real world human interest stories. And I just am so excited to continue to see that because we need it. I think in terms of maybe snubs or anything like that, of course, I would have wanted Chadwick to win, Of course.
What?
Yeah.
Here.
But something that I saw, I think, with his brother, who essentially said the Academy Awards never really meant all that to him. And I think that just speaks to how much of a beautiful soul he was and how much he was a student of cinema. And I think that's even more beautiful. So yeah, that's what I would say, my little 2 cents on the Oscars.
I mean, I would say that, part of what we're seeing with those Oscars, it is difficult to deny that we are in the midst of one of the largest observable cultural shifts in memory.
Yeah.
You know, so, and I'm curious with you, Giselle, this is now your third studio. How has the tenor of your internal creative conversations changed in the wake of these ongoing and widespread calls for social justice and equity?
Well, this is a great question because I think it kind of goes back to our title of today's panel in terms of socially relevant versus socially responsible content. And so I think you get into, when you're in rooms with creatives and executives, I think there's a want to make change, and you look at what's going on in the world around you, and it's, you know, what can we do to penetrate the system and to help out? And oftentimes I think it's easier to go to stories and to specifically speak upon what's going on in terms of police brutality. And sometimes it's very easy to say, what's our spin on that? Or what movie can we create to again, shed light on the issue? And for me, often I've kind of had to sit in the rooms and take a step back and figure out, you know, professionally how to say, this isn't the right thing to do. And even though it makes sense and it's relevant to what's going on in the world, it's not necessarily what we as a studio should be making. Because for Black people, that is a reality. That is, those are our brothers and our sisters and our aunts. And, you know, we live and breathe that. When we go to a theater, especially after the pandemic, and you're talking about what our lineup is going to be after all of this is said and done, and we're back to a new normal, we want to see us falling in love on screen and us laughing and us dancing, you know, happy content. And I think that is the socially responsible response, where you're counter-programming reality with escapism. When you go to a film, you want to, it's escapism. You want to kind of see other people or see your experiences, but in a different way, and have fun. And so, yes, in today's world, I think it's easy to get caught up and want to kind of make what you're seeing, when I actually think you should counter-program that and actually show what's not being seen in the media to make true change.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there has been a great deal of discussion of late regarding, to make up a word, the pornification of Black trauma.
Yeah, pain for profit, I like to say.
Say again? Pain for profit.
Taking our pain for profit.
Pain for profit, very interesting. But so how do you balance the need for authentic cultural representation with the danger of perpetuating the victimization narrative? You know, if the last 20 years have been about the exploration and, as a consequence, the normalization of Black strife, mm-hmm. How can we work towards the normalization of Black life? Like, how does that work? And I'll throw that to you, Fassa.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would say this is something we talk about all the time. I mean, I think we have to be able to find stories that move beyond our racial identity and the trauma that comes with that. I think we have to be able to really explore, as Giselle was saying, like explore stories that have to just do with life with us and, you know, the cultural identity that comes with that. But that doesn't have to translate into pain. It doesn't have to translate into trauma. It doesn't have to translate into why it's so hard to be us, you know. Like, I think that it's really difficult to kind of get some of these scripts and even watch some of these things that it's almost as if we're reliving the trauma to pay tribute. But in actuality, it's not paying homage, it's not paying tribute, it's actually triggering. And I think that it's really important to be able to share with the world stories that move beyond just what it is like to just be Black. And also too, in relation to to white people. I think that's also something that I feel like we have, in storytelling, we have to move beyond. And I think we need to be able to kind of really delve into what it is like to, fall in love, what it is like to have a boyhood for a young Black girl, like I think that those are all so important and we live it. And I think that it's really important to see these stories on screen to show other communities that we have these experiences too. So I don't know, it's hard because you want to be able to, again, pay tribute, but at what line does it cross? And I think that we have a really hard job in understanding and in trying to determine that for ourselves, to say like, what is acceptable on the big screen? What is no longer acceptable on the big screen? And then also educating our colleagues about it, right? Because oftentimes our colleagues want to go dive in and say, well, we have to show this and we have to show that. When in actuality, it's like, yeah, you want to see that, but do we want to see that? And I think that's like it. That's the job. So that's what I would say.
You are actually both executives who are working with much more senior executives in your respective divisions. That's just the way it's always going to be. How do you go about kind of delicately educating some of the gatekeepers to the changing world that they might not be as closely connected to? Like y'all got feet in the streets, right? So how do you bring that knowledge to C-suites? Like how do you, without overstepping, educate and enlighten? How do you find that balance? Giselle?
Yeah, I always kind of like cross-analyze. So if a comment is said, I tend to go about it in asking a question. So I'm like, oh, like why is that? Because for me, it's like I really want to understand that point of view so that I can have an informative counter argument to come and swoop them in. So it's like it's getting the full picture of why you think that way. And then once I get there, that's when I tend to follow up the question when it comes to this, particularly in terms of content, with who's the audience? Because then they'll say it's quote unquote diverse audiences. And then that's when I'm like, well, we kind of already know this already. So it wouldn't actually be new or exciting to us. And then it's kind of like the awkward pause. And then it's like, so I read this other script the other day, and then I kind of just try to redirect the conversation, right? So I tend to that's kind of my process. I first ask questions, and then I ask who the audience is. And that tends to really help, because when they realize that, I'm like, technically, this should be for you all. If you want to learn about this issue, technically, you're the audience, but you're not going to market it that way, right? And once they realize that, then I really don't have to say anything, because they kind of get it, and then we kind of move on. But that's been my successful process so far.
It's got to be even more interesting for you, Fassa, in some ways, because you started as an intern and then have moved into the executive ranks. But there's always that, a lot of those same people are still there. So, I'm sure that's an even more interesting balance for you to find at times.
Definitely. I mean, 100% I'm the baby of the group, but I'm also kind of like that screaming baby a little bit, in the sense that, can you please listen to me? No, I agree with you, Giselle. I'm the same way. And I think it's definitely, you have to be able to pose a question to the group, and understanding where people are coming from, because I think at the end of the day, we all have different experiences, and like different, even within the Black community, you have a different experience, right? It's not a monolithic community. We don't all feel the same, right? But at the same time, like, I think that it is, we have two jobs. We have the job of like being that creative exec that can look at anything and everything, be universal. And then you have the other job of like educating about the Black experience, but also you end up actually educating people about the POC experience, because by default, we know what it's like. And so I think that we end up having to have all of these different jobs. And so I think that, you know, for me, I try to do my best of just being transparent and honest and come in it with a personal connection to the story, or a personal connection to why I feel something or why I feel a certain way. Like, this happened to someone that I know. This happened to me. I think that you always, you know, there's a sense of empathy and sympathy that you kind of have to have in this job. And you have to kind of set that tone, because I think for way too long, our industry, Hollywood, has been so elitist that, like, it has always been like this certain group all the way over here that has no relationship with the community that they're marketing to, or the community that they're making movies for. And so there's been this kind of these two kind of houses on the hill that are just so different, and they don't know anything about each other. And so I definitely think that, like, our responsibility, my responsibility that I feel, and I'm so excited to see more people that look like me, because when I was an intern, there wasn't that many creative executives that looked like me that I could look up to. There was, you know, one or two. There was my boss at the time, but like there wasn't that many. And so I think that, like, I felt like I've had to assume kind of this sense of responsibility, now having a seat at the table, to be able to say, hey, if you don't know, I do, and let me educate. Not saying that it's always the right thing to do, but if I don't do it, then who can and who should and who does? And so I think, and to be honest, I really do feel like, because of the position that we are having at the studio, we have actually, I would say, missed a lot of bullets. So I think that's really important, and I hope to see more of us at the table for sure.
Yeah, one of the things we say, so for our D&I at Sony, we have found that diversity and inclusion are terms that are often used interchangeably, and they are actually different terms. So we say that diversity is having a seat at the table. Inclusion is having a voice at the table, and bias is why you hear some voices more clearly than others. You know, and we all have unconscious biases that we have to deal with. Yeah. You know, one of my mandates at the studio is to, as I mentioned earlier, is to ensure that when we are speaking to our audiences, we're speaking with the most authentic voices possible. What does that mean to you? Who gets to claim authenticity? And I guess more importantly, who does not? And I'll just, for an instance, right? So double Oscar winner this week, Chloe did this beautiful film, Nomadland. She is not white. She does not have much to do, I don't think, with that van world. I'm sure she understands human connection and disconnection, because she certainly illustrated that very well. But she made a beautiful, beautiful, well-rewarded film, and is not necessarily a part of the culture that she was examining. So does authenticity demand that the members telling the stories look exactly like the story they're telling? Yeah, man, I threw it at you. You got to think about that. You got to come at me now.
I always laugh when people who are on panels and they're like, that's a great question. And I'm like, can you not? And here I am. That's a great question, Brad. I am very torn on this subject. And I think it's my friend group. We all love film, and we have these conversations all the time. And it depends for me. Like Waves, Trey Edward Schultz's Waves came out a couple years ago. And that's another example I was very torn on it, because you have a great director, a white male, and this very intimate, heartbreaking story around a Black family. But the movie was beautiful. And I really did love the movie, but I couldn't help but think, I wonder though, if a Black director was behind this, what are those nuances that could have been picked up that maybe weren't fully explored? So I think, one, it depends on their passion for the story and how they plan to navigate it. But so I don't think you should close off people directing or writing certain stories, because on the opposite end of that, sometimes you can pigeonhole people and you can say, oh, well, the dangerous cycle, if you don't try to broaden it up, is I think people of color, creatives, would suffer more, because you get into rooms to pitch certain projects. And if it's not like a Black lead, for instance, then maybe you wouldn't hire that Black woman to write that script, even though she may have had like the best pitch. So then I think it gets dangerous when you're trying to diversify up rooms and filmmaking spaces. If you say, oh, you're Black, so you can only direct this Black story. Oh, you're Asian, so you can only direct Asian people and write Asian stories. I think you're pigeonholing people and their point of view. But my thing to those artists who are wanting to dive in, I think it needs to be honest. I think it needs to be transparent, not for a money grab. Like, if you are a white person wanting to direct Black people, have an answer as to why. And why you think you're better to tell that story than a Black person. But I will always fall back and say, I do think certain movies are better with the people from that community directing them, because again, I go back to the word of nuance and how there are certain ways that Black people talk to each other and do certain things that, for instance, again, I go back to Waves, and there's a big argument scene where he like blows up on his dad and his mom. And I'm like, I would have never been able to have left that house if I did anything like that, you know? So it's, again, those little things.
Whenever I see that, when like the teenage kid like blows up the adult, I'm like, man, that's some white people shit right there. Like,
yeah,
right. That's not an option in our community. That's simply not an option.
Right. So I think the films could be better sometimes for those types of moments, but I think we can't pigeonhole, because I think people of color would get the short end of the stick if you pigeonhole people to only be able to direct or write stories based on if they're from that community.
And plus, I would imagine this is something that comes up with your group like more than like all the time.
Yeah, I would definitely say more new age, in the sense of like, I really do believe that you have to be able to, if you're a director, you have to be able to acknowledge the space that you take up. If you're not from that community, you have to be able to, and I think I definitely echo what Giselle said, in the sense of like, you have to be able to competently say why you. And I think that, to me, is like very, 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 very important. And I also just think when you see it, when you read it, you feel it, and you know right then and there that like, okay, maybe we need other collaborators. Maybe this isn't the story. Maybe like there are certain things that you just kind of pick up, and you understand that like this person, if they're not from this community, can't and shouldn't do it by themselves, to be quite frank. Like they need other collaborators, they need other producers, they need a co-writer, they need to be, I feel like we have to, like the stories that we tell from this moment on need to be as authentic as possible. And to me, what authenticity really comes down to is, how do you, again, take up space, and how do you correct that if you're, again, not from the community that you're speaking about. And so that's kind of how I look at it. But, I definitely think that this is going to be an ongoing battle. I just really hope that more people of color can be able to tell stories that go beyond, again, just racial identity. I think that's 100%, that's so important, because I just feel like, to Giselle's point again, our industry has a legit problem with pigeonholing, people of color, and deciding that they can only do a certain thing. Whereas with white filmmakers, they can universally do anything. Yeah. And I think that.
A little bit of a freeze there.
Oh, no.
Give her a second to come back. You touched on this a little bit as to what you are hoping to see come out of the pandemic. Stories around Black joy, stories around Black happiness, more traditional life. have you seen that change in the pipeline? Has the pandemic and the widespread demands for change altered the kind of content that the studio is making? And do we believe that the post-pandemic audience is going to have different set of demands than the pre-pandemic audience?
Yes and yes. So to answer the first question in terms of, Fassa, did you want to finish your thought?
Oh no, it's okay. It's okay. It's fine. I'll do the question.
So yes, that's actually a huge part of why I was hired over at Screen Gym. So I've been here for about 6-7 months, which is crazy to think. And a huge part, again, right now, Screen Gym is very much so known for horror and thriller. They just did the Unholy that came out. And in interviewing, I was like, I'm going to be honest, like I love horror, I love thriller, but what I saw myself being as an executive in the film industry is definitely, I want to reinvent the wheel on rom-coms. I want to do some comedies, some grounded sci-fi with people of color in it. So I was very honest in my interview. Lo and behold, that's what they were looking for. They were looking to add some variety to their slate. So yes, very much so looking for uplifting stories. We even have a musical on our slate. So definitely looking for more fun content. And in terms of the conversations changing, I'm constantly talking to agents and managers and asking, what's the rom-com that you have down the pipeline that's about to come out? We'll love to take a look at it. Because I really think once the pandemic is over, people are going to want that. People are going to just want to feel happy and to feel joy. And I think it's going to be hard for someone to get out of their house, to get dressed, drive to a theater, pay for a ticket and popcorn and all of this stuff, and kind of leave the theater feeling low and down. I think people are going to want to feel uplifted. And in terms of the content, I think we've got to give them stuff that they haven't seen before and take risks. Because I also think you can't go back to, when I speak about reinventing the wheel on rom-coms, I think it has to kind of be a genre blend. So it's a rom-com with some sci-fi in there. It's a rom-com, but maybe it's like an adventure tinge to it. Because I also think audiences are smart and they don't want to see something that they think is going to be predictable. So if you're operating in the more comedy, rom-com musical space, you've got to make it feel elevated and fresh and fun and unique and give them a story that's unpredictable. So that's my constant thing when I'm working with writers and breaking a story. It's like, well, this makes sense to go this way. So can we make a left? Like, because I feel like the audience will know that it's going there and we want to take them on a ride when the theaters open back up fully.
Very, very cool. Plus, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I'm so sorry, I got a little bit cut off, but I would also say, I mean, agree 1,000%. We want escapism. We want to be able to get out of our reality. I think for us over at Stage 6 Acquisitions Group, like we're really focused on finding love stories, like sweeping love stories. That's something that we really believe that, whether it's a sense of connection, whether it's a sense of just like, again, feeling a sense of like completion, like that, we really believe that that's going to be something that will pop, romance, sex, like all of that, but in the most like, tasteful way. We definitely want to kind of see that come through.
Interesting. Very interesting. Thank you. I'm going to take some questions from the audience because some really cool questions have been coming in. I'm going to start with one that I'll read the question and then I'll give you my concerns about the question, but then we'll answer it anyway. So one of the more intriguing questions is, if we start with the proposition that film is propaganda, which is obviously a discussion unto itself, but anyway, is it your belief that telling happy Black stories will create happy Black lives? And I'm going to answer this a little bit. So, one of the things that I was talking about earlier is, presenting the normalization of Black life, so that Black life isn't filled with trauma, isn't filled with pain, isn't filled with victimization. I've been doing this a very long time. And I have, over the course of my career, been pitched the first Black everything. Like you can think of any occupation there is, and I've been pitched that story. And generally speaking, you don't want that story because it is filled with depictions of victimization, because being the first there is often uncomfortable and painful and difficult. So I don't necessarily want to, perpetuate that narrative. And it's, again, the question is, who is this film for? So if I'm showing the first Black hockey player who got shit in all of his life and, got beat up all the time and was, widely rejected, who is that film for? It's not for the 7 Black hockey film fans. It's so there's, to me, there's no question, there's no need to make that picture, right? But and apologies if the producer of the film for the first Black hockey player is on the line right now, my bad. But if we do present films that are more around the normalization of Black life, then that is, just like any other authentic voices, creates relatability and an understanding, and it removes the sense of otherness that is at the heart of the racial divide. So do you believe, in answering the question, I'm going to ignore the idea that the proposition of film is propaganda, but I will ask, is it your belief that telling happy Black stories will create happy Black lives? And I'll go with Giselle first.
I think happy Black lives already exist. So it's just a matter of seeing it on screen. I don't necessarily buy into the notion that, oh, we're going to do this Black romance, and because of that, it's going to be more Black love. Like, Black love exists. It's just the fact that we don't get a chance to see those stories often. So when you make these movies, when I'm making those types of movies, I am making them for Black people. And if other people want to come along for the ride, great, the more the merrier. And maybe that can inform outside people that, yeah, Black love exists if they don't know it, but for us, we do. So I think it's more so just, again, going on a fun ride and being able to see that love story play out. I don't think it would change any type of ratio in the Black community or anything.
I would definitely agree with that. I mean, I think the goal too with film is like especially from a creative executive point of view, like, my goal is to be able to create stories and reflect the time in life, but also to like make sure that we have this notion that this is universal, that anyone and everyone can have love and be romantic, and I think that's what it is, because I think specifically with Black love, Black stories, Black romantic stories, there's this notion that Black people can't love, that they can't, and obviously this is something that's, historical, but like that Black people can't love, and that we can't be in romantic situations. We can't have our meet cute. Like, there's all of those things. I also think that there's this notion that like Black people are only sexual animals. And so I think that the notion to be able to create these stories is really to show that, no, we can have, our pretty woman, like we can have these beautiful, like universal love stories that, again, white people and our white counterparts have had. And I think that's something that's like deeply problematic, and that's our goal to change it. And that's my goal.
There's a couple of questions here that are very practical kind of housekeeping questions that I neglected to ask. So for Screen Gems, we know your budget level. Do you have a rough number of releases that you have per year, or a target of releases per year?
We do 3 movies, 3 movie releases a year. But we could have any number of films on our slate. So that number is definitely way higher because, certain things take time. But yeah, 3 films a year is the Screen Gems goal.
And similarly, Fassa, does Acquisitions have a target or a goal of number of films that they release?
I would say for wide releases around 2, but we acquire close to 20 to 40 movies a year, and then we release through whether it's A24, whether it's Amazon, whatever our third party domestic distributor would be, we will go ahead and try to match those releases internationally. So we acquire, again, 20 to 40 movies a year. So yeah.
And in the most basic of terms, how do people get to you? There are, I should imagine, I can't really tell, but I would imagine there's a number of emerging filmmakers on this listening to this conversation. There are barriers to them getting to you. So what are some of those barriers, or what are some of the ways to get around them to getting to a Sony Studios to have your project considered or acquired?
So the standard typical way that I'm preferably not a huge fan of, because I think, again, this goes to the gatekeeping conversation and access. The standard way that I'm sure everyone on this panel knows right now is it's the agents and managers who submit material. However, I've been finding a lot of great stuff on like Coverfly, like that. It's an amazing system that writers can go and upload scripts, even short film scripts up on that website. So actually, when I read something that I like, it's like a private messaging system on there where, you can chat with the writer, set up a time to meet. And I've had a lot of general meetings that way.
I have not used Coverfly that way. We just use Coverfly as the initial rating and review service for the Diverse Writers Program that I just launched. But I didn't know that you could go there for and find as a discovery platform.
Yeah, it's like a filter system. So again, I'm in the comedy rom-com space, so I can filter it out and say I'm looking for a Latinx rom-com. They don't have to be repped, and because they also have that filter there if you want that. And they show me the material. So that's been a really great way in terms of meeting up and coming writers. So I would say like getting on those types of databases
So
can maybe
Coverfly,
block out the middleman.
Coverfly, Blacklist, things like those.
Yeah.
Act is another one that's coming up as well, that Ron Howard, it's part of Imagine. So that's also another one that's similar to Coverfly.
What's it called?
It's called Impact.
I have not heard about that.
This is also a really good one too.
Okay, very, very cool. And then let's see here. This is an interesting one. This is particularly interesting for Black executives. So, like I said, I've been doing this for a long time. And one of the things that I have seen often with Black studio executives and network executives is that after a certain amount of time within the traditional system, they move to create their own thing. They either go into a producer space or they try to create, opportunities for others, but they go outside of the traditional executive system so that they are not moving towards being, say, the chairman of a studio, but instead more onto the independent production side. So the question that has been asked is, does being in the spaces that you occupy inspire you to create your own tables, knowing where the gaps exist?
I think
I'll go to the young blood first. Let's go to Fassa first.
This is such a fun question. I mean, does it? Yeah, I mean, of course, at any point I have felt inspired to say, I know how to do it. I'm just going to go and, make the change myself. But, at the end of the day, like, I definitely feel, we need more people that look like us in the system. We need to be able to combat it from the inside, because at the end of the day, studios are that we have the green lighting power, right? So I definitely think that there is a sense of extreme amount of power that that we have, and I think if we continue to go on this pathway, we can be able to create real change. Now, on the other side of it, it's like, all right, it's been around for 100 years. Our studio has been around for like 100 years. Like, or how can we continue making change? At what point? I am from the Bay Area. I grew up around technology. My whole family is in tech. I understand what it means to be a disruptor and to be a part of a space that is constantly trying to find ways to disrupt the traditional models in which we do everything. And so 100% I'm inspired by that. But what I would like to say that I'm doing is trying to use that type of model or that type of those principles to be able to bring it in our system, in Sony, to be able to make these changes. And I do feel like those things are happening. So I think it's just a mindset. And I think that there's room to do it all. So I'm really inspired by that. Someone who I definitely look up to is Charles King, and the ability to go ahead and like create this amazing production company we're working with right now on one of our films. Like, that is a really cool space to be in, and to say that I was an agent, I was a partner, and now I'm ready to go off and do my own thing. I love that model, and I think that there's room to be able to do both.
Giselle?
Yeah, it definitely, it gets tough because a lot of times, you read something that's a really cool piece of material and then you get told it's not necessarily for the studio. Like, this isn't our thing. And it's kind of like, what does that mean? And it's like, well, you know what? Well, I'm gonna go make it. Like, whatever. But I agree with Fassa in that there is power in being a green lighter. And I can't tell you how many times that I've gotten on meetings with writers and directors, and they're like, wow, I'm so happy to see you on the other side of the screen right now, because we're in COVID. And to be able to see it, to be able to talk openly, and you get my story, and you got this piece, and you got that piece. And it puts you in a different mindset of, even though I might be annoyed in this moment because this grounded sci-fi project with Black leads wasn't for us, quote unquote, but there's a bigger picture, and the conversation could be very different in 5 years, in 10 years. And it's kind of like, it'll be worth it if like you stick around and you stick for the fight and you do your part, and eventually you'll wake up and you hopefully can be like the real person making the decisions inside the studio, because I think it's needed. And again, if all of us leave and we all go and we're producers, we still have to come back inside these spaces and pitch, and it still is a yes or no. And I want to be able to be the executive that's saying yes to these projects with people of color. So yeah.
Charles King is a good friend of mine. He's no relation, even though we sit beside each other at every conference. But we've known each other for years and years. And I made a really big effort to bring him to the studio when he was looking for a deal, but we weren't able to make that happen. So I love what Charles is doing. That was kind of his game plan from the get, even as he became an agent. But I think I'm in real agreement with both of you. Having been the creative executive in that casting session or in the meeting with the producer, or even more importantly, having met with Black producers, having them leave the room and basically having to explain what they're talking about to the white executives with whom they just met, that role is invaluable. So I think there's a role for the inside agitator. And an inside agitator is a necessary component for sustained and observable change. I really think so. There is, I'm going to have one more question, and then we're going to wrap things up. Actually, I'm going to answer one of those questions. So one of the questions is, what steps should a screenwriter take who does not have a proof of concept or a trailer for his film? That filmmaker should make a proof of concept or a trailer for his film. So don't go into this room unarmed. You don't just go in with the tools that you need to sell your project. You must have some sort of proof of concept. If not a trailer, you certainly need some sort of proof of concept, something that's going to tell people the kind of film that they're going to be looking at. So don't play. You can't go in short. You get one chance.
piggyback off of that too, I think a lot of times money is a big issue for people and wanting to shoot their like short film proof of concept type thing. I've seen a lot of smart pitches where they'll just pull clips from other movies and it's like, this is the tone that I'm going for, this is the pacing that I'm going for, this is the comedy that I'm going for. And that actually tends to work, and that will cost you nothing. Because I know that's a big thing, up and coming filmmakers trying to find money. That
I would
could be
say
a
two
smart
things to
solution.
that. One, a Rip-O-Matic, which is what that's called. A Rip-O-Matic is free. You can get that anywhere. You can absolutely make that. You can edit it on your phone. If you can't come up with a Rip-O-Matic, you are in the wrong business, right? So, and also in terms of making a short film that may prove your concept, you have a 4K camera that you're carrying around in your pocket every day. So, don't let the barriers get in your way. Just move them out of the way. You have the ability to do this. There has never been a time when it has been easier to make moving images look beautiful and tell stories. There's never been that time.
Love that.
The last question I'll ask, and I'll ask this to both of you. Do you have professional end goals, either with Sony or within the business itself? Where would you like to see yourselves ultimately in this business?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's such a good question. For me, it's not really about like a title or where, or it's truly about being able to be fulfilled and helping as many people as possible. I mean, in whatever capacity that looks like, whether that's being a chairwoman, whether that's running my own production company, whether that's being an agent one day, like it's like, I want to be able to help as many people as possible. I think at the core, that's what I feel the most fulfilled and satisfied with. I love doing the work, acquisitions, development, production. I love that, but I also think I can be an agent easily, fine. So I think, for me, it really is about like, where do I see myself helping the most amount of people? So that's my runaround.
Don't go to the dark side, Fassa.
Okay. Just to try a little bit.
Stick with us, baby. Stick with us. Stick with us. And Giselle, anything to add to that in terms of your goals and where you'd like to
I totally agree. I think it's just about helping the cause. And for me, when I die and move on from this earth, if there's just one person out there who says one of the movies that I made is their favorite movie, I think that would be everything. Because at the end of the day, that's why I got into the business. It's storytelling and it's movies, and I love movies and I have my favorite movies, and it would be an honor to make one that someone says, that's my favorite movie. That's a movie that if I were stuck on a desert the rest of my life and I only had one thing to bring, I would bring that movie along with me, and all would be right for me.
There is one last question, and I can answer this one actually before wrapping it up. So the question is, if we have our trailer, short proof of concept, how does one go about getting into these rooms in order to pitch? You mentioned agents, managers being an avenue. And you can also answer this. Yes, agents and managers are critical. This is a studio, this is very, very, very big business and very big money. And there are, we generally go to agents and managers as a shortcut to finding filmmakers because someone else has signed off on them already, and they may already have a level of accomplishment. It's rare that a complete newbie can come into a studio and get a film set up to direct, even if they have a great, proof of concept. So anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for me, I look under every rock. So oftentimes I found most of the people on social media, the people that I'm really excited about working with right now and helping and developing. Like it's the craziest thing. There's this director who did Dark City Beneath the Beat that actually played at the African American Film Festival. And then it played at another festival, and then I found it on Netflix, and then I slid into the director's DMs because I was so excited. So like I definitely think that like making sure that like you have your social media pages, public and, you know, putting your work on there and really kind of showing your vision, like using that as your portfolio. I think that's also going to be really, really, I mean, for me, I think it is really important. And I find a lot of people through those avenues. So I'm looking under every rock.
That's great advice. Giselle?
I've also slid into DMs of filmmakers as well, I think it goes to show, once you're making something dope, people will come to you because they'll want to work with you. If you're in a stage right now where you're trying to like get your first project off the ground, I would say focus on just making the project and making that project great. And then, you know, hopefully everything else will fall into that. I feel like a lot of up and coming filmmakers focus too much on the representation. And though that could make the journey easier, it's the same thing. They'll come to you once you make something that they can see. So if you're a writer, write the script. If you're a filmmaker, just make something, because then you'll get better and better, and it'll start making the festival rounds, or you put it up on YouTube and it gets hits. Like, there's so many avenues to break it. Just make what you believe in and make what you love, and the rest will fall into place.
I'll add one thing to that, and then I'm going to thank you all and wrap up. That in terms of, I agree, there is nothing better than making stuff in order to get you to the opportunity of making more stuff. The only thing I would say is, if you have a great script and you know that this script is really, really tremendous, and if you had $3.5 million, you could make this perfect movie. And then you say, well, you know what, I'm just going to make it. So I won't do this and I won't do this. And I'll get rid of that scene, and now maybe I'll just cast this person. And then after a while, your intent, your focus has shifted. At one time, you wanted to tell a great, powerful story. Now you just want to make this movie because you've gotten it into your head. I just want to make it. I just want to make it. I just want to make it. So if that is the case, you may be better served to make a portion of that film, or a great trailer from that film, or a great scene from that film, rather than making the compromises necessary. When you take your $3.5 million film and make it for $750,000, you are not going to get the same thing that was on the page initially. So, you know, yes, make stuff, but make stuff that looks great, that sells you and presents you as a powerful, impactful storyteller. And with that, I'm going to thank Giselle Johnson and Fassa, 5 fierce female execs from Sony Pictures Entertainment, for joining us at the Oscar Michel Film Festival. I thank the festival organizers, and I thank especially Aline Miles, our head of intersectional marketing, who put this all together. I hope that this was worthwhile for those who attended, and I'm more than happy to have been able to hold down this conversation. And thank you both for the conversation. Thank you, Oscar Michel Film Festival, for the opportunity. And everybody out there, stay up, stay focused, be good.
When the world witnessed injustice, people united in protest. So we came together in solidarity to support the movement for social justice and racial equality. Sony Pictures commits to take action and execute on a multi-pronged racial equity and inclusion strategy. Sony Pictures formed the Action Council to carry out this initiative, led by 2 co-chairs, Paul Martin and Keith Weaver, an executive sponsorship by Tony Vinciquera and Stacey Green and the leadership team. The Action Council is comprised of 12 executives from across the business who are passionate and eager to make a lasting impact. Our strategy is founded on 4 pillars: people, community, partners, and content. Each pillar uniquely supports Sony Pictures Action, and Sony Pictures Action aspires to be a key puzzle piece in creating racial equity and social justice. Our subcommittees align with these 4 pillars, as well as 3 regions, and focuses on 4 verticals: individual education and development, social justice and policy reform, authentic storytelling, and rebuilding community. Each subcommittee includes individuals with diverse skill sets from across the business and around the world. We are united as equals, stronger as one. Welcome to Sony Pictures Action.